Hello again, I am Blunty. Let's talk about Palworld some more, shall we? I put up a video yesterday talking about the remarkable success it has had so far, but today we're talking about the controversies around it. There's been a lot of hostility, basically, just tremendous amounts of hostility being thrust towards it for various reasons, and the thing that frustrates me most is there's no evidence. Like, people are screaming about how it's plagiarized Pokemon and just copy-pasted assets from Pokemon with no evidence. There's people screaming about how that didn't happen, but everything in the game is AI generated instead. All the monsters are just AI generated, and there's no evidence of that at all either. There is evidence that the CEO of the company is interested in AI stuff, and he's talked about how other people have used AI stuff to do, fake Pokemon things before, but in no way has that got anything to do with Palworld. That's just something he saw on like Reddit or something, and he went, hey, look at this, look what's happening here, isn't that interesting? The term asset flip is something I've seen being thrown around quite a lot with no evidence at all, and a tremendous misunderstanding of what the term asset flip even means, as far as I can tell, because every single person I've seen using the phrasing asset flip doesn't seem to understand what that even means in the context of gaming. And just for the record on that, using a pre-made asset from an asset store in your game does not make your game an asset flip. That's why those stores exist. That's why they keep existing. Because people who make games use them so they don't have to design everything in their game from scratch. The world I'm standing in right now is from Pokemon Arceus, one of the most recent Pokemon games I've actually enjoyed genuinely. That easel right there? That's just an easel. Was that designed from scratch, or was that bought off an asset store? Who cares? It's a frickin' easel. If Game Freak bought that and licensed it from an asset store, who gives a shit? That's what they're for. But rather than listening to me rant about this stuff, I want to present to you today some opinions from an actual game developer. And not just some random anonymous game dev, but actually someone who, carries a bit of authority. Dinga, Bakaba, studio co-creative director at Arcane Leon. His company is doing things like working on the upcoming Blade game. They did Deathloop, Dishonored, Grey Matter. So there's a pretty good chance we can all agree that this guy probably knows what he's talking about. So, while quote tweeting someone who said, haha, I've actually lost followers over Palworld discourse, people are losing their minds over this game and getting so angry. I know, it's ridiculous. So Dinga responded, yeah, I'm surprised how quickly this is escalating. I'll try to organize my own hot take-ish thoughts in a thread separating concept, execution, and dev. First, it's not a Pokemon-like game. Digimon is. And even if it was, so what? Cries in FPS, BR, Souls, hero shooters. That's the first thing I want to tap on here. Nobody gives a shit that Souls-like games are Souls-like games. The genre of the game is literally named after the game they're copying. Alright? Same thing happens with roguelikes. They're named after the game they copy. Or Metroidvanias. Again, literally, the whole genre is named after the games that inspired them. But Mr. Bakaba continues, what this game is a survival game, outwardly from the dev's own mouth, and the devs have said this quite specifically, inspired by Ark and Rust. Its main hook is how much it imitates, references, parodies, and efficiently blends designs and concepts from successful games, Pokemon, Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, Minecraft, Fortnite, at a minimum. I don't really see the Fortnite influence, aside from the general vague look of the game. I would have probably slipped in Valheim there rather than Fortnite, but whatever. I'll pause here to point out how eerily it blends all these together artistically, spatially, and mechanically, and it sometimes feels like you are in a cinematic fever dream logic where glimpses of games you spend too much time on appear in flashes, deja vu, and never disappear. Game-wise, a shocking thing is no one is talking about how it is compared to Ark and Valheim. Actually, that's not entirely true. I have been talking about that for days now, but I'm not going to slight the guy for having no friggin' idea who I am or not dropping by my tiny little Twitch streams. How approachable it is. Anecdota. 2 of the friends I'm playing with, it's their very first survival game, and one is very casual, but in a couple of hours we're all having a lot of fun. And that is a really good point too. Like, it has borrowed a lot from games like Ark Survival Evolved. Certain parts of the UI, for example, are very similar to Ark Survival Evolved. But the important thing that's going on here is what it has taken from inspiration from these other games, it has refined in its own way. It's put its own flavor on there. And quite frankly, it is more mechanically solid now on day one than Ark was. Ark was a friggin' disaster. I really wanted to like Ark Survival Evolved when it first came out, but it was such a janky cluster mess, I literally couldn't play it properly. And to this day, it is still janky and miserable. I've tried several times to go back to it and couldn't, which is one of the reasons I was so excited about Palworld, because once I noticed it was very similar to games like Ark Survival Evolved, except for, Pokemon style, critters instead of dinosaurs, I was like, hell yes! And it is very, very approachable compared to those other games as well. The way it leads you in, the way it guides you through an immersive tutorial, so you're learning things as you're doing them, it is designed very, very well. Dinga again. I'll start with this because it's one thing. I have a lol dis for real pitch. It's another to put in work like they did, both in sheer variety, elements and concepts in the execution of this scope and quality ratio for an early access launch from a Japanese indie studio. As a game designer, I'm a bit baffled that some say this is lazy. Even if you copy an idea from another game, you can just copy paste it. Even doing a sequel to your own game with the same programmer in a new game engine, it takes crazy amount of time to develop a viable version 2.0 of a mechanic. That's a really salient point too, this whole copy-pasting accusation. So a game dev thinking, hey, that's a good idea, that's a good execution of the idea we want to use in our game, let's start there, we'll rebuild that for our game and see where it takes us. That's not laziness. What's that old saying about not having to reinvent the wheel every time you want to build a car? And this new element, mechanic, art concept, etc., has to work together with a ton of other new things. Catching a creature to use it in combat exists in Pokemon and SMT and Xenoblade, etc., etc., etc. Base building exists in Ark and Fallout 4 and Fortnite, blah, blah, blah. But making sure it plays well together, the specifics of the 3C, and if you've never heard of the 3C before, it's a business dork thing. I forget what they bloody stand for. This thing. Feedback, balancing, etc. makes it that taking two things and smashing them together in a way that works and is approachable to mainstream players is not an easy feat. If only for that, I take offense at lazy being thrown around, and so do I. I am not a game developer, but I've had many conversations with game developers over the years, and this is exactly the kind of thing that I've had conversations about. Talking about, hey, this mechanic in this system in this game is very similar to this game that you're building right now. And we've had conversations about how complicated it is just to, take the idea of, let's say, base building, being able to put down a foundation and walls and roofs and stuff, and create that in your own game in a way that fits with the rest of the stuff you are doing, is not just copy-paste basebuilding.exe. I'm going to talk about this from a YouTuber's point of view for a minute now. I have been a YouTuber since there was a YouTube, basically, since before Google bought YouTube. That's how far back I go. A couple of decades worth. And I was around when the term vlogging was invented. We took the words video and blog itself came from weblog. I was around when that word was invented too. That's how old I am. But video blog became vlog, and I was one of the first people to do that style of content. And there was a very specific style of editing those vlogs that I and about 2 or 3 other people started to use here on YouTube with smash cuts and things like that. I've been using it throughout this video. And that became a genre style of YouTube. And none of us were like, hey, you're not allowed to use that editing style. We came up with that. And it was something at the time that was very, very unique to YouTube videos, because that style of smash cut editing was just not acceptable in films, in TVs, in documentaries, things like that. It was considered disruptive to the narrative. But when you're talking about a YouTube video where someone's just waffling to the camera and all you're doing is cutting out the ums and ahs, or you're doing a smash cut in where you've moved closer to the camera because you're only dealing with one camera and it's probably sitting in one position, so you don't have the camera person to zoom in or move the camera or reframe the shot or do a second shot or anything. You're doing it all in one take. That's what I'm talking about. Did I and my fistful of other YouTube creators at the time invent the smash cut? Hell no, we didn't. We were just using it in a way that wasn't considered proper editing at the time, and it became a friggin' style. This is how art evolved. Art design, I'm not a jurist. As someone said, cute monster parodying Pokemon has a range. And in terms of direction, why should you make it different from the material you are parodying? Should Spaceballs design be more different from movies it parodies? Another excellent point. To a certain extent, Palworld is parodying Pokemon. It's taking some sort of more violent real-world things that Pokemon doesn't usually present, like, hey, where does the meat come from? and the absolute reality of if superpower monsters did exist like this and people could just capture them and use them for their own purposes, you bet your ass people would put them to work building shit and put them to work attacking people. Absolute blind spots that Pokemon hardly ever acknowledges, much less writes narratives around. And if you are going to do a parody of Pokemon, you're gonna make sure that your shit looks a bit like Pokemon, because that's the basis of it. If you made it look completely and utterly different with no design similarities at all, not in the creature design, not in the way they are rendered, not the presentation, not in the way their attacks work and everything like that, how is that a parody then? Where is the cognitive link between what Pokemon does and what Palworld is saying about that kind of world? Use of AI. I'm a bit iffy, but we'll try this as of now. Good faith argument. Same thing I'm coming at it from. Has anyone got proof that generative AI has been used in this game? If it is suspicions based on opinions of this indie studio's creator, I think I'm even more ill at ease by the discourse around here. This studio did a game using AI and were earnest about it. Why should we assume they are hiding it for Palworld? Suspicion is legit, but I'm ill at ease with it being thrown around as fact. It's misinformation, and ironically, a thing we all fear AI will cause. And he's dead right on that. The kind of misinformation spreading like wildfire right now, based on no actual evidence at all, is exactly the kind of thing that people are worried that will happen from AI. Fake crap spreading without anybody fact-checking. And he's right about the studio thing. They did make a game based around the concept of AI art, and they were completely upfront about it. They even whined publicly about how much strain it was putting on the service, because doing that is a very sort of processor-intensive thing. And what is more, as part of Steam's own terms of use for developers, if you use AI shit in your game, you have to disclose that legally. Why would they possibly risk themselves being delisted from their main PC storefront by not complying with Steam's rules? And the fact that creators are interested in AI, he's talking about the CEO mainly here, well, a lot of publishers/groups also express interests. Acts natural, that means he's thought about it as well. When we are not scrutinizing all of their announcement releases, accusing them, we are allowing ourselves this because it's Japanese indie studio. I don't know what he means about that. Is he claiming racism as a cause here? I don't know. But he's right. If you are in the creative field and you are not interested in AI, if you're not paying attention to it, if you're not thinking about what it can do, how it can do it, you might be an idiot. Because ignoring it is not going to make it go away. Of course, you are going to be out there looking at what's happening with it. You're going to be talking about it. You're going to be discussing it. You're going to be, as the CEO did, commenting on someone else's work where they used AI to generate fake Pokemon. And that is the context missing from a lot of people accusing this guy. Oh, this guy's into AI. And look, he's already out there doing fake Pokemon AI. Of course he would have used it in Palworld. No, he was commenting on someone else's use of that. I'm not defending his opinions about this, because he has some very iffy opinions about what happens to copyright and all that sort of stuff. And that's a big thing as well. AI itself is not evil. How we use it, what we train that AI on, and whether or not we're training it on people's work with permission, or just without their knowledge. That is the big issue around AI. But just using it as a tool when you've done things properly, when you've done things legitimately, is not just this evil. Now, tomorrow, if it's proven, it is a different debate. Don't get me wrong, and you'll see me silently disagreeing from the sidelines. I hear it's too much to ask from Twitter to be reasonable, but this place is the sum of every one of us, and we should never stop to encourage reason. Yeah, people just flying off the handle, they see a headline or something. I had this happen to me yesterday on the video I made about Palworld yesterday. Some D-bag tried to put me on blast yesterday because he read the headline of yesterday's video, guessed what it was about, made an assumption, imagined what it was about, and he thought it was all about this AI stuff. I never even said the word AI in yesterday's video, but in his imagination, that's what my video was about. In his imagination, I was coming to the defense of it. In his imagination, he constructed an entire video out of nothing more than a headline, and then decided to put me on blast on Twitter about it. The guy imagined something, got mad at his own imagination, and then slung shit at me for it. What a clown. You people have to stop doing this. I get this on almost every video I ever make. Someone will leave a comment, and they clearly haven't even watched the video. They've just guessed what it's about, decided to be angry at their own imagination, and just targeted all that bile at me. It's not fair. To conclude, details aside, we always say imitation is the highest form of praise when being given more of what we love. Heard it plenty about Souls-like, for instance. Ba-bam! For all the copycat talk, it is very unique, and the fact that it can be successful is why I love indie games. And whether or not Palworld is your jam, remember that in the end, it's all about what entertains you. There isn't a shortage of options to play. Don't feel like you need to shotgun any game that is successful and doesn't appeal to you personally. Let others enjoy theirs and enjoy playing your games. And one last thing, someone responded in response to the tweets I've been... And one last thing, someone posted a response to the thread I was just sort of cherry-picking from there. Because according to the developers of Palworld themselves, to be honest, I don't know... To be honest, I didn't know the internet was saying it was Pokemon with guns. This is what the CEO had to say. But there you are. That's my thoughts so far on the ongoing controversies of Palworld using the framing device of Dinga Bakaba's tweets here. A successful AAA developer, I think we could safely say. So thanks for watching. I am Blanty, and I will catch you next time. Thank you as always to the patrons up above there. Thank you to everybody out there who's been using the link I've had pinned in the last few videos to help me out a little bit financially. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone who's given so far.